Can you hear me? Folks, this is our 1 minute warning. We're going to start right at 7 p.m. with the workshop.
I'll get with Greg and find out for you.
Oh my gosh, just my little candy.
Where did this come from?
I don't know. You can have it. Merry Christmas.
You know what this is? It's for a leaf spring.
What's that?
It goes in, it holds a leaf spring.
I don't know who.
Probably Randy.
Somebody from planning and zone, or planning and zoning.
All right, I've got 7 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is our workshop to discuss proposed legislation regarding the reduction of county property taxes and potential impacts to the county services. I want to start out by acknowledging the fact that none of us know what's going to happen. None of us know what the outcome of this is going to be. We know there have been at least 8 bills that have floated. I think 4 have made it through committee. We're also waiting for a proposal that's promised that's coming from the governor. We have the benefit of the governor was actually in our county doing a presentation when he told us that he was going to do an offset for physically constrained counties. If it comes down to that, I'm sure we appreciate that, but it's important for the public to know that I do believe the governor is sincere in that, but he cannot unilaterally make that decision. That does have to pass through the legislature, so we have to convince the legislature that that would be the step to go as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start out tonight. I've invited County Commissioner from Bradford County, Chris Doherty. He is currently the chairman of the Small County Coalition. Small counties are always disproportionately affected in decisions like this, so I've asked him to come speak, along with Chris Doolin, the executive director of the Small County Coalition. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Thanks for hearing me this evening. Folks, I live in Bradford County, and I'm the current chairman of the Small County Coalition. Our counties are very similar in size, but you all have a Publix and we don't, so I applaud you for that. So that's great. That's great. So nice riding down through here. A very, very pretty area, and I've been through here a couple of times. But anyway, I just want to thank the board for their consistent involvement and engagement in the Small County Coalition. It's very important, not only for this county, but for all the small counties in the state of Florida. I'm here again, as Chairman Thomas said, with Chris Doolin, and he's our longtime consultant, and we're here to observe, to encourage, and to support the effort that you're undertaking this evening, and to analyze the potential impact that there could be with property tax proposals that are being considered. And Chairman Thomas, you did mention that we don't know what they are yet. The governor will still come out with something, but at that point, with the proposals that are out there, just trying to see what this looks like, not just for your county, but for all small counties. Because we certainly hope that the legislatures will backfill the physically constrained counties, because we will need help if this happens. So anyway, I thank you again for your effort, and this time I'm going to ask Chris Doolin to come up and share some thoughts. Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Doolin. Welcome to Wakulla.
Thank you, sir. This is a really nice county. I enjoy a lot of friends down here, and I go through there regularly here. You got me? Can you all hear me? Okay. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to visit. I really want to commend you for what you're doing tonight, because you are going to be, in essence, a signature template for what needs to happen for the taxpayer statewide. And it's very important, because what we're dealing with is a decision that the taxpayer will have in November of 2026. And what is that decision? The decision is, you know, the affordability crisis, this, that, and the other. You know, how can I get more money to help me through my daily life? And so one proposal, one side of the equation is property tax reduction. Okay. The other side of the equation is the services that you are providing. This is not your money. This is not our money. This is taxpayer money, and they have a decision whether or not the services, the 911, the dispatch, the recreation. And this is not a scare show. This is not the sky is falling, because this is not going to happen for a year and a half. And I'm going to go through some of that if I could. But I wanted to compliment you. And I trust that the folks understand that there are no decisions here now. It's the facts, it's information, it's evaluation, and it's preparation to implement if the decision is adopted statewide by all the counties in the state, regardless of whether they're growing or not, regardless of whether they have a beautiful rural culture that people enjoy, whether they're growing this. So that's really, we don't know what the proposal will be. In fact, there are 23 proposals. The speaker has rolled out 8. As you said, 4 are moving forward. Several others may move along, but 4 are going out first. There's another one up this week, and so it's going to winnow down. The governor has not revealed his proposal, but he is very clear about reducing property tax for homestead. And he did mention protecting the rural counties, which will have a significant issue either way for us or for the rest of the state having to pick up the tab. The Senate will have 1, the governor will have 1. The House Speaker has said he doesn't mind having multiple proposals, which in essence would be kind of confusing for the taxpayer. And but at the same time, that's where we are right now. There is a focus, a reduction or elimination of homestead. That's where it appears to be focusing. Now, how big will that be? Not sure. There's a proposal on there that if you have comprehensive home insurance coverage, that you'll get your homestead. And that will help you pay for your property insurance. Well, okay, what if I'll just leave it with that. I mean, you can determine who's going to benefit by that. Is it going to be the insurance companies that benefit by making sure that their coverage, is anybody doing anything to reduce the property insurance statewide? That's not in my notes, but I mean, I'm going to try not to get off on it. There's another proposal. Everybody over 65, homestead. Homestead's gone. Sounds great, right? Well, you're 65 and over, those are senior citizens on fixed income. They have worked all their lives. So they ought to get some breaks, right? There's no residency requirement. Come on down, New York. You're not going to have to spend a dime for services. And those folks that come from New Jersey and New York, they are going to expect services, okay? So this is not just a matter of people opposing these things. They're not necessarily against the reduction, but we've got to work this out. And how is it going to affect us? There's no implementing bill that says exactly, the governor says, I'm going to provide $300 million. Let's put that in an implementing bill prior to November of 26. Law enforcement, every one of these proposals protects law enforcement. Let's define law enforcement. Is it the dispatch guys? No. Is it the firefighters? No. So people are starting to come in and say, carve me out. Well, if you carve out the rural counties, you will be wards of the state. You will lose your capacity to govern your counties, and your taxpayers will have to, if they need an expanded services, they will have to go to the legislature every year. And if you don't have an implementing bill before November of 26, you know who's not going to be around? Governor DeSantis. He's a hero for rural areas, but he's not going to be here. So we're pushing for an implementing bill. But let me get back to the information so that, you got my gist of why you need to analyze these things and just everything. So the appropriate role to play now is to analyze what is going to be the impact. Second, once you analyze the impact, you inform your public. They need to know what the impact of a proposal is going to be, presuming it passes or they pass, and the plan to implement if the proposal is adopted in November of 26. Whatever is adopted in November of 26 will not go into effect. It will go into effect on your tax roll, but it won't affect your budget until 27, 28, okay? So you'll go through another budget process, and what you're embarking on tonight will help you Identify those programs that are critical, that are important, or they are other. And you'll identify how much ad valorem, homestead ad valorem is in your budget, because if it goes away, you can begin to identify now and notice and look at and evaluate what programs need to be continued, so that you can, one, identify and give notice as to what's going away, but two, educate the public that they might say, no, I like our senior citizens. No, I like our this. No, I like our that. I want to make the choice to do that. So whatever is adopted in 26 is going to be impacted in 27-8. So the vote, in 26, you'll have an adopted tax roll will be adjusted to the reduction, and the new revenue levels will be incorporated in your 27-28 budget. So what you can look at, so what you're doing tonight, I've skipped around and I've said some things that I was going to say later. You can look at your current budget. This is what we're suggesting. And Ralph, you were very instrumental in statewide. Look at your current budget. Identify those programs that are considered critical, important, and other. Those that would be reduced to the level of the homestead value in your budget. That's your target amount that you're going to have to reduce. The process will give advance notice. You will carry this evaluation of programs, I would suggest, into the 26-27 budget, even before it impacts, so that you're giving notice to those that are getting funded now that won't be getting funded. They'll have one more year in 26-27. You can choose to either cold turkey and cut it, or you can choose to say, we're going to set this aside and we're going to fund programs for another year so that folks that are reliant on support, your nonprofits, things like that, will know that a year from now, this is not something somebody may want to do this, but this is something that the taxpayer and the public have done in their budget process, and you've provided. You've been very conservative. I mean, you've reduced your millage rates, that maybe not the latest. I haven't looked at all that, but you're a pretty conservative county. And why should you be? Let me just hold up there. You'll carry the evaluation. You will continue to fund as usual, or you will target programs for a reduction, or will you say to the public, we will fund these programs for a year? Let me just say, and getting ready to close out, this is not a shell game. This is not a scare tactic. This is a bona fide effort. What you're doing right now, you're not trying to scare anybody, and I think it's very noble what you are doing, because it's very transparent. And this is a bona fide effort to evaluate the impact of these proposals and prepare for a transparent process so that the citizens of Wakulla County understand the impact. And if voters are going to decide in 26 whether they choose to have the reduction or whether they continue to have the services that address the growing needs. So I want to thank you for that. But let me tell you a little bit about fiscally constrained. There are 29 fiscally constrained counties. They are counties that are defined as 1 mil of property tax is less than $5 million, okay? So per capita statewide, 1 mil of property tax generates $148. You know what yours generates? $65. So you are $83 below the statewide average. That's one revenue source, your millage. Then you go to a local option sales tax. Local option sales tax, let me see, I'll find you. At any rate, you are well below. So you rely on state revenues for your program. Small County Road Assistant, Jim Spratt's here. He's worked with me for years on providing a safety net for rural areas, whether it's fiscally constrained funding, whether it's roads, whether it's salary assistance for your sheriffs, which is non-recurring. So the essence of the state taking care of you depends on who's in office. And so, there's about $35 million that we secured through the Senate president a couple of years ago, and the sheriffs. It was their initiative to give a substantial boost there. But what happens when that goes away? What happens when we get into a tight? So, yeah, we'd love to be offset. sure, but you're going to be wards of the state, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So, you know, that, hey, life is tough, and what you're doing is heads up. And hopefully you got a very active community. You got very active folks over here that pay attention to this commission. You got very active folks that talk about taxes and understand that. And so, you know, hopefully we're working at step one here tonight to identify those programs, identify the impact, and prepare them for a year and a half now, which could and will reduce programs, or not. So thank you for the time. I have to get back to Tallahassee. I've got a family obligation, but I wanted to come down, and I asked Chris to come down with me because we're pushing this out statewide, okay? This is going to be televised. There will be a video, and we will send this out as to, so it's not a decision that you're going to make to do anything in particular tonight. In fact, I'm not sure exactly, other than outline a workshop program, identify your priorities, and we'll continue to work to identify the impact of these proposals. Let me tell you something. You know, Bob Barker, if the price is right, come on down. You know, I'm not too sure we want to do that. You know what I mean? You know, let everybody come down here without a residence requirement, or, you know, reward the insurance industry when that's part of the problem, you know, or anyway. All right, well, I've talked too much. I appreciate the opportunity to come down. I want to thank you all for participating tonight. I'm sure that you will continue to do that. And hopefully I haven't offended anybody, but if I did, I'm 75 years old and I'm a member of the I Don't Care Society.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Doolin. Thank you, Commissioner Doherty. Next, we're going to turn it over to Michelle Metcalf. Come on down.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Chris kind of stole my thunder tonight, so I'm going to briefly go over just a few things about the current legislation that's sitting out there. Prior to the start of the 2026 legislative session, as Chris mentioned, 8 property tax proposals have been submitted that offer property tax relief. The proposals range from a variety of tax shifts that would have a direct impact on how local governments operate. I would like to provide a very brief overview of the 4 proposals that have moved forward in this process. House Joint Resolution 201. This resolution proposes an amendment to the state constitution to exempt homestead property from all ad valorem taxation other than school district levies. House Joint Resolution 205. This legislation proposes an amendment to the state constitution to exempt homestead property and all levies other than school district levies for people who are 65 or older. Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 209 proposes an amendment to the state constitution to increase by $100,000 the exemption of homestead property from all ad valorem taxation other than school district levies for homestead properties that have property insurance. Chris alluded to that earlier. And finally, House Joint Resolution 211. This proposes an amendment again to the state constitution to increase the maximum value of accrued Save Our Homes benefit, which may be transferred to a new homestead for all levies other than school district levies. Each of these proposals have been heard by 2 House committees, the Select Committee on Property Taxes and the State Affairs Committee, and have passed along party lines. All of them now sit in the Ways and Means Committee, with HJR 209 scheduled to be heard Wednesday, December 10th at 8:30 by the Ways and Means Committee. There are a couple things of importance to note regarding this legislation, and Chris again alluded to this. Each of the proposals prohibits local governments from reducing funding for law enforcement services below the fiscal 2026 and fiscal year 2027 funding levels. Second, these proposals do not state any mechanism for implementation or revenue replacement. And third, to note that throughout the proposed legislation, there's been no mention of fiscally constrained counties and the significant impact these property tax relief amendments would have on them. Wakulla County is identified as fiscally constrained, and any of this legislation would impact how our government operates and provides services to our citizens. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jim Spratt, Wakulla County's lobbyist legislative liaison, to the podium to talk a little bit about the upcoming session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Welcome, Mr. Spratt.
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. I kind of feel like Casey at the bat, if you remember the old analogy. I'm looking at strike three because they took all the good pitches. My notes included an overview of the legislation, but I do think it's important to drill down, and both Mr. Doolin and Ms. Metcalf hit on the salient things, but there's kind of, as it stands right now, I want to be clear. The governor has consistently said what he wanted, but we haven't seen a quote-unquote proposal out of his office. We do expect that to be coming based on what he has said. He has been consistent, but again, he has not played the game, quote-unquote, yet. Secondly, it still takes two chambers to pass a bill. And up to actually today, the Senate has largely been quiet on what they thought or what they were going to do. I think it's noteworthy to point out that the Senate president was asked about property tax today, and to paraphrase, he would have suggested, or he did suggest, that his rural communities haven't really been asking for this type of relief yet, per se. But more importantly, I think he also pointed out the very clear distinction in that, you know, the legislative body, the House and the Senate, still do the budget. They still appropriate. And so when we talk about what is an implementing bill, when we talk about what is the impact to rural communities, I think all of those things come into play. It's a discussion to be had, but you have to have all parties at the table participating. Secondly, what I would say, and again, Michelle did a very good job of highlighting the kind of the four proposals that we know today. I would put two in kind of the value-based category. This idea of increasing the homestead exemption from 100 to 200,000 insurance, that's a value-based. As property goes up and down, obviously things are in and out. And the other one is the elimination of the portability cap. And so, the analogy to that is, I live in Tampa and my house is valued at $2 million and I sell it and I move to Wakulla County. Well, under the current law today, there's a $500,000 cap and there's scalability. Under the proposal, the $500,000 cap is gone, but so is the scalability. So presumably somebody could leave or sell a home in South Florida that was worth $2 or $3 million, move up here and build $1 million home and have zero property tax liability because there is no cap, there is no scalability. And again, I'm not suggesting it's good or bad. I'm suggesting that's the reality, that's the impact of what happens. The other two proposals, again, that we know today that are out there don't take really value-based into the equation. See, once you're 65, property tax goes away. There is no, as you've heard earlier, there's no residency requirement. There's really no qualifiers other than when you hit 65. The other being the full elimination of homestead property. I mean, I think it begs a question is what happens to other classes of property? You as decision makers here as county commissioners, what are you forced to do? What are the discussions you're forced to have on rentals, on commercial property, on any business property, on industrial property, on agricultural property, or any of the other working waterfronts, any of those other classes which aren't primary homesteaded residents that are now exempt? What do you now do? What does the legislature allow you to do? Because again, there is no implementing bill. And so if you look at the plain language of the proposal, which says primary homestead exempt from everything but school tax, okay, so what do you now do? What is your direction for all of those things? I think, again, I think the discussion is good to have. I think it's also important to note that probably now as much as ever, or now in as much as ever, we have a very strong coalition of rural community supporters. I think the governor has done a very good job of supporting rural communities and trying to help rural communities grow their tax base, grow those things. I think, clearly Senator Albritton, and I can name a whole list. The problem with naming one legislator is you always forget one, right? But there are clearly members of the House and the Senate from from Representative Abbott to Senator Albritton to Senator Simon, Representative Schoaf. I mean, again, just go down the list. That we have many vocal advocates that sit in arguably senior positions or leadership positions within the House and the Senate that are keenly aware of challenges within rural communities that maybe urban communities don't have. So if we're going to have this debate, I think from a timing standpoint, this is a better time to have it than other times looking back through the legislature. I can't stand here today and tell you that it's all going to be okay. I mean, this is not the Lion King. We're not singing Hakuna Matata. We're going to have to work. We're going to have to pay attention. The implementing bill becomes important. What ultimately the House and the Senate and the governor agree to becomes important. I would also mention this, 60% is not an easy threshold, period. There has to be a cheerleader, a very vocal cheerleader, to be successful, which means everybody has to be bought in to the direction we're going. I know the legislature put some proposals up a few years ago, and they did not meet that 60% threshold. In some ways, when we look at our constitutional amendment process, somebody is the parent, right? Somebody owns it, whether it's a group who feels they've been aggrieved and haven't gotten something solved in the legislative process, whether it's whatever, pick your poison, but somebody is the owner. And we should be aware that if there is consternation, if there's disagreement, if someone's not married to whatever proposal comes out, while it may seem like it's a slam dunk, when you start counting all the votes, 60% is a pretty high threshold. That does not mean we should bet on not getting 60% or getting 60%. We have to do everything between now and then to make sure we're in the spot to be successful and to be responsible to the folks who have elected us. But there's still a lot of work to be done here, and there's a lot of the onion that hasn't been peeled back yet before we're ready to have a real solid answer. But I do think that what we're doing here tonight, the discussion we're having, and kind of the preparation and the reality of what could happen is important in that process as we move forward. So sorry I don't have anything more new information. Again, you had some very good folks come in and highlight things, but I'm happy to be here, happy to listen to everybody's input tonight, and thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next, I think we're going to turn it over to Ms. Kelly Graves. Thank you.
Okay, so for purposes of this exercise, we're using the current year, the fiscal year 25-26 budget numbers. The county is budgeted to collect $18,840,018 in property tax revenue for fiscal year 25-26. Property taxes make up nearly 49% of our general revenue, which is what we use to operate the general fund. According to value data reported to Department of Revenue by the property appraiser, homestead property makes up just over half of the total assessed property value, with the other half being made up of non-homestead, residential, commercial, tangible, personal property. This is an important figure because, as we've talked about, many of the legislative proposals, or most of them now, center around eliminating or reducing homestead property tax specifically. As Mr. Doolin said, we're a fiscally constrained county, which means that one mill generates less than $5 million in property tax revenue, or in other words, our total taxable property value is less than $5 billion. Wakulla's fiscal year 25-26 property value is $2,526,954,437, which means we generate right at $2.5 million per mill. Our notable constraints on our taxable property value is the rural area, of course, meaning we have a relatively low density, but also more than 70% of our geographic area is public land and therefore untaxable. And just a note here, for purposes of this exercise, we're using revenues and expenses that we're budgeting to spend. So we've stripped out all of the reserves and the interfund transfers. These are dollars we're budgeting to collect and to spend. So as we said, property taxes make up 49% almost of our general revenue. And general revenue is the portion of the budget that's unrestricted, meaning it may be used for any and all public purpose. This is as opposed to restricted revenues, which are limited to specific purposes. So we're going to take a quick look at the restricted revenues so we can establish the revenue sources that are not on the table for this exercise. Grants, of course, are limited to funding for the specific grant project. Building department fees operate the building department. Court and criminal justice fees operate court operations. Fuel taxes collected by the county can only be used for transportation. That's our road and bridge department. Our fire assessment, of course, can only be used for fire protection. Tourism taxes, our hotel bed taxes, are restricted to use for tourism development. The 1 cent sales tax is for infrastructure. And then, of course, we have fees, sewer fees that fund the wastewater operations, and our solid waste assessment, which operates solid waste collection and proposing disposal, and then landfill operations. What that means is that these funding sources, because they can only be used for their restricted purpose, none of them could be used to make up any funding gap resulting from property taxes. But that also means that the services, because they have a dedicated revenue stream, are relatively safe. Although it's important to note that the county administration, which is operated by the general fund, provides administrative services to the restricted fund departments. So any reductions in the general fund would eventually have a downstream impact on these services. Jumped ahead of me. Go back one, please. Thank you. So these are our sources of general revenue. Property tax, and in this case we've separated homestead versus non-homestead property taxes. State revenue sharing, which includes supplemental payments for fiscally constrained counties. Local taxes, those are our utilities and communications taxes. And then our small categories are remittances from other funds, which are payments for the administrative services that come from the restricted funds. Federal lands revenue, that's money that we receive from the feds in lieu of property taxes for our national forest lands. Cash forward, which are cash savings from previous budget years. And this is where we've stripped out the reserve. So some cash we bring forward in the budget and place it into reserve for contingency, but this is just the portion of the cash forward that we are budgeting to spend this year. And then miscellaneous funds, which are things like earned interest, rebates, some charges like that. And then we also have departmental revenue, which is revenue generated by some of the general fund departments through various fees. For purposes of this exercise, we're going to separate the departmental revenue and show it as a deduction or an offset for each department. These are our general fund departments, and this table shows that some of them generate some revenue, but no general fund department generates enough revenue to fully operate it itself. So they're all reliant to some extent on general revenue to make up the difference. The highest percentage of revenue generation is in the EMS department, which is budgeted to make just over half of the cash needed to operate the service. So for this exercise, we're going to use the net expense of each of these departments. Also for this exercise, we're going to group various general fund departments into service categories listed here from the most expensive to the least. So we've got the sheriff, which encompasses law enforcement, corrections, emergency management, is $16.5 million. Our other constitutional officers at $4.9 million. Health and safety, those are departments like our health department, our EMS, animal control, $4.2 million. Local government, $3.26 million. That's the county administrator and the Board of County Commissioners offices. General and administrative, maintenance of county property, community amenities, and public services. So these are the county services funded by general revenue. And at this point, I'm going to ask the commissioners, we have display boards here. This represents our general revenue bucket. And the commissioners have the list of services operated by general revenue. So what we have is $35.4 million. And if we lost homestead property taxes, that's about $9.4 million. That leaves us with $25.9 million. If all property taxes go away, that leaves us with $16.58 million in general revenue, and so on. So, what do we pay for first?
Well, obviously, public safety is going to be at the top of the list.
Okay. All right. So is that law enforcement, public safety?
Well, according to what was read to us, we're going to have to cover law enforcement. We have no choice.
All right.
So, but yes, on our pyramid, always public safety comes first.
You want an agreement?
I agree.
Okay. Okay, so this is the sheriff's. That is $16.51 million. So we can just about pay for that and have a little bit left over if all property taxes go away. So if we want to do the rest of public safety, you want to do EMS?
EMS would fall next,
Okay,
because our fire is covered under MSBU.
so that's health and safety here. That is our emergency radio system, Medicaid, the health department, medical examiner, animal services, probation, EMS. Okay, so that's next.
But if they do all property tax, we're in the red.
That's right. Already. But let's say that,
They just do homestead.
Who's gonna write a check? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're mandated by statute to pay the constitutional officers, and so we certainly have to figure out how to comply with the statutes.
Okay, so now we have a supervisor elections, a property appraiser, we have a clerk of court, and the tax collector, all right? So that means what we don't have is,
Community amenities.
we don't have, property, auto, and liability insurance on county property yet. We don't have our hardship programs. We are, let's see, maintenance of county property, not doing any of that. We don't have any community amenities or public services. We don't have a local government. We don't have a board of county commissioners or an administration office to do HR and payroll. Those are all of the things that we're missing.
And we're in the red, again, even if we just do homestead.
That's right. So here is how the rest of that plays out. So do we want a local government or a general administration next?
You have to have both.
I'd say
Local government
local government,
first.
without local government, you
Without local
can't really
government.
run general administration.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that leaves us with maintenance of county property, public services, that is the library, our extension office, economic development, veteran services, and then community amenities, that's parks and recreation.
Probably maintenance of county properties, man.
Public services or amenities?
So amenities is recreation and parks. And public services is library, ag, 4-H, economic development, and veteran services. Who would want to be on record for eliminating either one of those?
No kidding.
Well, who wants to live here? You have to have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the picture. That is how we use property tax revenue.
Where, Kelly, is the homestead revenue comes into where? What's the public can see it, right there.
I mean,
Right there, yeah.
26 million.
So we think that that's the prevailing popular bill that's going through, will eliminate homestead at a minimum. And again, we may be offset. We may be offset as physically constrained counties. Some counties may not. But if we do not get offset, that's where we'd be at that first line.
Jessica, can we go to the next slide, please? What this doesn't show is that many of the services operated with general revenue are mandated services. So when we look at the list of mandated services, as you said, we have to have a general government. We have to maintain county property. If we own it, we have a duty to maintain it. We have to have an EMS department. We're required by the state to fund contribution to the health department. So this is all of the mandated services. And this is what's left. This is what's discretionary. Discretionary services are our local nonprofit contributions, our revenue collections, a small department, administrative department. In their employee services, we've got some benefit programs, an internship program, a special assessment, a hardship program for people under a certain income threshold to be exempt from their special assessments. Some membership association, and then of course our amenities and public services, recreation parks, library. These are all things that programs we're not required to have. And it represents about that much of our budget. So we could do away with all these programs that people care about, and it still doesn't get us close to the revenue loss just from homestead property taxes. These are required programs that we have. We are required to have them. We are not necessarily required to fund them at the level that we're funding them at today, but we do have to have these programs.
Now, didn't it say that I think Mr. Doolin said that if the sheriff's office, we wouldn't be, for law enforcement, it said that you couldn't do a cut.
Well, but this is, and that's where the details matter. So we fund the sheriff for law enforcement, but also for emergency management, for courthouse security, the bailiff, and for the county jail.
So we could-
And it depends on the implementing bill to say, could we cut the correction side if we did the law enforcement side? That's a question.
So if we get rid of the discretionary items, we're talking $3.2 million. We still have about a $6 million hole to fill just to get to the level of eliminating homestead property taxes, not to mention all property taxes. But $6 million of cuts would be required in addition to all discretionary. So no library, no parks and rec. Animal adoption, we're not required to have. Animal control, we are required to have.
Well, that is, so in this graph, that's part of our mandated services because we do animal control and animal adoption center. And that's where we would get into, we may not be able to provide that service at the level that we're providing it today. Statute requires we have animal control services. It doesn't require that we have an adoption center.
Yeah. We have to provide service. We have to answer calls for service, is what the statute says.
So what would it take? Let's say we took the $3.2 million. What addition, you've already mentioned that we have to provide these mandatory services, but we can scale them down to a level. So what would it take to get to that $9 million homestead line? If we eliminate discretionary first, what's the next cut would be required?
Well, there's some options to consider. Jess, can we go to the last slide? We've talked about some of these steps before during budgeting season. These are some strategies that the board might need to consider. I haven't prepared any detailed analysis on any one of these strategies, but this is something that the board would want to explore either in preparation or in advance of any kind of legislation. You could certainly direct us to do so. But they focus on finding other ways to increase revenue or finding ways to decrease expenses.
Decrease expenses would definitely be the way to go since.
That's how we'd have to start, for sure.
For sure,
Well,
before we increase.
yeah, no, I agree with that completely. She said decreased expenses would be the way to look at it, and I think I agree with that as well, because I'm not sure that if our voters pass this, and we don't know, but if they pass it, I'm not sure they're saying, reduce my property taxes, but jack me up on everything else that you have the authority to do.
No.
You know, I think that would be a little disingenuous, and that's where the challenge is. If this passes, that's going to be the challenge, is to read that from the public and find out, you know, because it may be the public is perfectly willing to cut down the size of government and have, you know, stand in longer lines when you go get your tag done, not have library. We may be perfectly fine with that, and that's what this is going to come down to, that once that pie is defined, we have to decide, do we simply take those cuts? Do we offset it with some increases somewhere else? Some combination of the two? And we're not going to decide any of that tonight, for sure, because we don't even know what the outcome is.
Well, and there may be some verbiage in the bill that makes it where you can't do some of this.
I'm sure there will be.
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure that there will be.
I'm a little concerned that most of the time when there's a constitutional amendment, there's an implementing bill. We've heard that term many times tonight. Implementing bill tells the public how, if this passes, how it's going to be implemented. So each of us, when we go and vote, we've got an idea of what we think is going to happen. But without an implementing bill, none of us have any idea what that bill is going to show. So this passes, and then it's kind of like Congress. We got to pass the bill to see what's in it, and I think we all know how that worked out. So I think we need that implementing bill. That way, you may vote for this, and you find something that you wanted to protect is now on the chop block, and you say, I wouldn't have voted for that had I known that. I think not having that implementing bill is a huge, huge part of this, and it may come about. It's not here now. There's no implementing bills on any of these proposals. I'm hoping it comes about. That way, we're informed. We're better informed on that vote. Further discussion? Questions from great presentations by everyone tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
Very good job.
So we do have some speaker cards. Anyone who would like to speak and has not filled out a speaker card, while we're going through these, come see Miss Jessica, fill out a card, give us your name, address, and each of us have 3 minutes to speak, and we'd be glad to hear from you. Again, no decisions tonight. There's no way we can make decisions tonight. What we're doing is gathering information and providing information, and hopefully we'll be better informed once we figure out what the final outcome is going to be. So we'll start out with Miss Ravens Peters. Come on down.
Good evening, Raven Fears,
Good evening.
Cooperwood Road. One, this is all great. I know you guys got to start looking at stuff, but why don't you just let the legislature cook first? Second of all, I don't care either way. I don't really want to eliminate property tax because I don't want people moving here. So it is a double-edged sword.
It's a good point.
I would like to not pay property tax, but I also don't want people moving here. So if I have to pay a little extra for people not to move here, that'd be fine. I think they're going to come anyway, though. Couple of things you guys could look at is things like your internal audit report from this year. Looks like it hit in March of 2025. You've got, sewer connection fees. Something happened with a grant. We ended up having to eat a bunch of that. What I find interesting is that these presentations are beautiful, and this is beautiful, but there's never a conversation of where can we cut. It is always, no, we can't cut. Oh, no, there's no fat to cut. I disagree. I worked in government for 10 years. There is always fat to cut. So you're approaching it one-sided. This is a little fear-mongering. I thought Doolin actually, and I'm not a huge fan of Doolin, but Doolin did a pretty good job of saying, hey, we haven't figured it all out yet. We haven't got a good handle on it. And then we come in with this, and it's like, oh, we're not going to be able to afford that. We're not going to be able to afford this. And the general public is out here that probably doesn't have a whole lot of accounting background, you know, as a conglomerate, and they're scared. And then they go to the ballot and vote. I agree with you, Ralph. I think that we need to know a little bit more about implementation because you need to know what you're actually voting for. I got plenty more to say, but I'm going to save it for later, maybe the next meeting.
Thank you for coming. Mr. Kenneth Clisby. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Cam Clisby. Something that struck me about all this is y'all talk about raising taxes and cutting services, but you don't talk about streamlining your own business because none of y'all been in business. So when I walked in here, the first thing I noticed tonight, brand new truck out here says, visit Wakulla, all these graphics. How much does that truck cost? And is it needed? That's just one of the things I noticed quick tonight. I don't think y'all operate like a business, and that's what needs to be done. You know, there's people in the county that probably do need vehicles. They could be paid mileage for their private vehicle use per via IRS rules. That's pretty straightforward. Privatize, these are just ideas. Privatize the road department. Privatize your maintenance department. You're already paying a mechanic. I don't know about the sheriff's department, but I know the fire department pays a mechanic outside. Privatize your fleet maintenance. Actually, I would like to do this. Citizens Committee to give you suggestions and recommendations. I have not heard that, but I would propose that you do that. And that would be to review county expenditures. I'm not against reducing some of these programs. Some of them need to. Make the existing parks, rec center work. Pay for them. Upgrade them. You don't need new ones. Pay for the ones that are there. Just fix them. Something I've always been wondering about. Who does the bike trails maintenance? Anybody?
Road and Bridge.
Who?
Road and Bridge. The Road and Bridge Department.
Oh, they do? Okay, okay. So that's an expenditure. So the bike trails are great. We got them, I guess, for free, but now we got to maintain them. Why don't we privatize that? And I'm not saying that's all good ideas. I'm just saying these are some ideas. But I think there's probably a lot of wasteful spending within the government itself. In fact, I can guarantee it in the county government. When I see vehicles like this, when I pull up out here, and I'm driving a 14-year-old vehicle, I don't think anybody in the county needs to drive something like that. Selling county properties. Why don't you sell the airport? It's useless. Nobody uses it. It's not a county airport. It's a private airport for Tarpine. It's been that way for years. Anyway, I would really advocate for a citizens committee to review the county expenditures and with business people that know how to make a profit. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. David Damon.
David Damon. Yeah, that's a good idea about the citizen committee. I have one. Said it for years. Impact fees. Imagine if we were collecting impact fees every 100 houses. If we did it like other counties, like Seminole does, and many other counties do. And I know you're going to say, oh, but we can't spend them. Well, you can. They spend them. And a lot of these services that are on here, which I thought was real interesting, have to do with growth, and impact fees could be used. You'd have to figure it out. You'd have to pick and choose. But for every 100 houses, it'd be, if you did like they did, it'd be $1.5 million for every 100 houses. And you're trying to make up $6 million. You could make this up in impact fees, a large part of that in a year. Not to mention everything we've given away to developers for the last umpteen years, and it's been on the backs of the taxpayers for all the infrastructure and everything else that comes with these developments. And we that live here already have picked up the bill for that instead of charging the developers like it should have been done all along. And that's a travesty to do that to all of us. When they're coming in and taking advantage, clear cutting our land and building cookie cutter houses, the least we could do is not have to pay for it ourselves. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that is all the speakers we had speaker cards for. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that has not filled out a speaker card? And there's other opportunities. Again, you don't have to fire all the shots right now tonight. We're going to be talking about this many times, especially as we figure out how this comes about. All right, further discussion from the board.
Just got to wait and see.
Anything additional from staff?
No, we appreciate everybody coming out.
Yeah. Thank you. 8 p.m. Wrapped it up in about an hour, but this is not the last word. So we will be back. We will continue to watch what's going on in Tallahassee. We will try to communicate that. I've said this at several meetings before. When I grew up in Wakulla County, we didn't have near the services nor the expense as we have now. Can Ralph Thomas go back to those days? Today. Today, I can. I live in the woods. If I've got to grow my own food like I did growing up, we can do that too. And I'm not saying that's where we're at. I'm just saying that can I go back to some of these services? I can. We all have to make that decision. We all have to decide. We didn't have a library when I was growing up. We didn't have Parks and Rec. We only had a couple deputies on the road. I don't believe we had any animal control. I think the deputies might have taken care of that, you know, and so we didn't have a lot of those services here. Do we want to go back to that day? You know what? Most of our ancestors throughout the history of time didn't have any of the things that we have today, including air conditioning in the house. So can humans live with that? We can. We just have to decide, do we want to? We just have to decide what we want, what we're willing to pay for, and what we're willing to sacrifice. And so I ask you to just stay informed, you know, and we're trying our best to be transparent and show that these are some costs. Do we see all the impacts? There's no way we possibly can. But we're opening that door, that conversation, so together we can look at those impacts, and as a community, we can decide. Now keep in mind that ultimately, we can decide for our community. But if one of these bills come forward, this decision is going to be made south of I-4. This decision is not going to be made in Wakulla County. We can vote for or against it. The majority of votes in this state are south of I-4, and that's where the decision will be made. So it's important for us to talk as a state. This is a state decision, not a Wakulla County decision. Anything further?
No, I just think it's important that if it does pass, we have to look at every option.
Yep.
And we should look at trying to cut stuff now, decrease expenses now,
All good.
instead of waiting until the last minute.
Yep.
But I know, we have no idea, it's up in the air, but I do think we should always look at ways to cut things back. I remember I wanted to decrease the military, and we said we had to prepare now. Well, the year out, we should start preparing,
Right.
just in case. That's all I have.
Very good. Anything additional? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all for participating.